We play and call it work.
Hey everybody, Matthew and Steve here from MiniWarGaming.com, and welcome to this discussion video where we are going to talk about a very important topic, which is all about the Age of Sigmar turn mechanic, or as most people like to think of it, double turn mechanic. But it's not really a double turn mechanic, it's more just random turn, which then creates double turns.
Boom. In my experience, when people talk about it, they just call it a double turn.
Right, but that's not what it is.
True. It's true.
Yeah.
That's what people
it can create the double turn,
Yeah.
but it's not the double turn mechanic. And we'd love your feedback
Absolutely.
on what you think about this, because we have a very different experience here in the Mini Wargaming bunker, Mini Wargaming studios, than the majority of you guys out there.
Yep.
And so a lot of the points we're going to make is based from our point of view and how we experience the game.
Yep.
And we experience it by having people from all over the world come in and play us, and those people are usually super casual.
Yep.
They not that they don't try to win, not that they don't know how to play, but they're usually not here. They don't travel 1,000 miles just to prove a point.
We have a very unique meta.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we have each other, which are used to playing those types of people. We play all the time, but we're also very casual. But that doesn't mean that we're not down for throwing down and trying to win a game. It's more just that we don't do tournaments typically. We just kind of play for fun. We play for narrative. We try things out, and then we are quick to move on to new armies. So it's not like I personally find it hard to stick to the same army for a long time just because I get bored of it. But I want your experiences. So if you are an Age of Sigmar player or not, just kind of say in your comment what you are. You know, I am a Age of Sigmar player and I regularly go to tournaments. Or I don't play Age of Sigmar at all and this is why. Or I play Age of Sigmar just casually in my basement with my friends. Or my local meta at my store is like this. And that way it can give context to your opinions. Because if there's one thing that I feel brings up the most controversial subject in Age of Sigmar, it is how Games Workshop decided to write into the rules the possibility of a double turn.
Yeah.
So let me just frame this first, and then we'll go back and forth. So if you are not familiar with Age of Sigmar, basically I'm going to frame it from a point of view of Warhammer 40K, because I'm assuming most of our viewers watching this will at least have that. And if you're not familiar with that, well then just try to follow along. Because basically, in games of Warhammer 40K and Age of Sigmar, you have two large armies. It's not a skirmish game, no matter what they say. It's a large-scale game. You have possibly over 100 models on the table, lots of units, lots of things happening. And but one player does their entire turn. With the exception of close combat, the other player sits back and just only rolls a dice to see if their guys die or not. So when it's my turn, I move all of my guys. I shoot with anybody that can shoot. I then charge with anybody that can charge. And then when we get to combat, that's where it gets a little more interesting because in Warhammer 40K, all the chargers go first, but in Age of Sigmar, whoever's turn it is, they choose a unit, and then the opponent chooses a unit, and back and forth. So you're not guaranteed to do really well just because you got charged all your guys in, because he gets a chance to fight back. But being the one that charged, you're the one that gets to dictate positioning. So you get to dictate who gets into the fights, who doesn't get into the fights, all that kind of stuff, assuming that your dice roll well enough, of course. And so some people love we call a you go, I go, or I go, you go type of game, as opposed to other games which do things like alternate activation, where like I activate one model or unit, it does its thing, and then you activate a model or unit, it does its thing. Or games like Lord of the Rings, where maybe the phase goes back and forth, or Kill Team, where it's like whoever has initiative, they do their movement, then the opponent does their movement, and then you go back and forth, individual models shooting, back and forth, individual models fighting. There's a lot of different mechanics, all with their pros and cons. And so that can all be part of this discussion, too, of that. But Age of Sigmar, I don't think that's going to change. Large scale, I go, you go.
Yeah.
And so in Warhammer 40K, you determine who goes first based off of a die roll and based off of scenario sometimes. And there's always a chance to... it basically comes down to a die roll in 40K for most scenarios. And Age of Sigmar, it comes down to who can deploy their army faster. Because deployment, you actually go back and forth, but there's ways to deploy faster. There's ways to actually guarantee that you deploy faster than your opponent, almost. And then
you can plan for with most factions. Yeah.
Yes, but then you don't know. After the first turn, you don't know who's going to be going first in each of the turns. So somebody will dictate who goes first, and then every other turn after that, you will roll off to see who gets to choose. It's not the winner goes first, the winner gets to choose. And the tie in the dice roll goes to the person who went first last round. So if you went first last round, you have an above average chance of going first in the next round. But there's 5 turns in the game, and so almost every single game, what you're going to see is that the person who went second will then have a choice to go again right away. And often, especially from turn 2 to turn 3, going again is incredibly powerful and game-changing. It can either turn what would have been a balanced game into a one-sided game, or it can turn what was a one-sided game into a balanced game. It does both. We can argue about the frequency of which of those in this video. So the question is that a good mechanic? So Steve, we're going to start. And
Okay.
we're going to treat this a bit like a debate, except that I think we both kind of are on, I think I'm more on the side that it's an okay mechanic, but I wouldn't mind it being gone. And you're on the side that you just want it gone.
I want it gone.
Yeah. So but we'll see it as we go back and forth. But as we make our points, I'd love you to make counterpoints in the comments below. So make sure you join in on the discussion, even have the discussion with each other. But try to keep it civil. Like, there's no point in just saying
We're talking about a game here.
We're talking about a game for fun.
Yeah.
And in the end, before we even get into it, I'm going to say one more thing. The game is actually quite popular. You can say whatever you want about it, the fantasy being a better game. We're not here to discuss that. You just accept the fact that...
Because we know it is.
Yeah. Yeah. We want square bases anyways, right? We're not here to discuss that. Yeah, so just keep that to yourself. That's not the point here. So that's not, those comments aren't going to be useful. They try to actually give reasonable, logical comments. I know I'm asking the general internet population to do that. And I think you guys can handle it. I think you all of you can be
Most
mature
of you.
enough. Yeah, most of you. Anyway, so yeah, let's go. So Steve, first off, is it a good mechanic? And why or why not?
Let's do. I wanted to just address something you've already said. You said sometimes it will save the game, sometimes it'll end it abruptly and make the game a pretty poor game. If I concede the fact that it's probably even numbers, who knows? I'll agree to you that probably it saves as many games as it has ruined.
No, I didn't.
Well,
I know we've had that discussion before.
No, I know.
In this context, I actually said it'll turn a balanced game to a one-sided game.
Yep.
Or it can turn a one-sided game
you just
into a
said that.
balanced game. I didn't say it'll
Okay.
save it.
Okay,
Although
yeah.
have
So
said that
I think
off
I'm
camera.
oversimplifying it, but
Yeah.
to go by what you said, sometimes, like you said, I'm gonna concede the fact that it probably takes as many unbalanced games balanced as the reverse.
Right.
I'll concede that right now. I don't think any mechanic in the game, even though sometimes it turns an unbalanced into a balanced game, should on itself unbalance a game.
Just with a single die roll.
No. I don't think any rule of the game on its own should have the capability of taking the entire game unbalanced.
Right.
Even though I can see that sometimes we play dice games, things go wonky. You may have an amazing army against a really poor army, and dice rolls that goes your way. You can still make a one-sided game with that power differential. Forget all that. That's going to happen in the game. But this is a rule that sometimes takes the game on turn 2, not often, can be on turn 2, and just ends it. I don't think a mechanic should exist, even though it's rare, that it has the capability of just ending and or ruining or unbalancing the game hard. Even though, again, I admit that sometimes it will save the game for simplicity. So that's my big thing with that right there. I think... No, I don't think. I know I've had many games abruptly end on turn 2. And I know I'm going to remember them because I hate those ones. On a single die roll where I feel like I didn't play or my opponent didn't play. We deployed, I moved up, they went twice and it's over. Or vice versa. That's unfun and takes a lot of the tactics out of the game in my opinion. I know people argue you got to plan for it. I don't like that argument. I think...
You don't like other people's arguments.
That's true.
Let me do that.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. So the entire the mechanic of potentially going twice in a row, and that's what we're really talking about here, is potentially going twice in a row. That doesn't work in a large-scale game. If we were playing a much smaller scale game, a much more smaller model count game, it absolutely...
If that, you're making the assumption that smaller model game still is I go, you go?
No, I'm saying if you had a smaller scale game, you bring in that kind of mechanic, It typically
But is that smaller scale game I Go You Go, or is it alternate activation, or how is?
no. Let's say Age of Sigmar would just play with just 5 wound character models,
Right.
and you each brought like 5 to 8 of them. With a double turn on that scale is going to be less crippling, far less crippling than the large scale games.
Why?
Okay, so basically the reason here is when you have a single model, 5 wound model against another single model, has a much less of a swing than the big model, like than a large unit, which would potentially have a bunch of attacks or synergies and buffs.
Yeah.
You can potentially absolutely destroy an opponent in 1 good round of combat or 2 in a row. If you pick in your fights, you go in with some models, destroy something, move on to the next one. Whereas when you go to the small scale 5 character type thing, 5 wound character type thing, you could outright kill that character, but if you don't, he could outright kill you, but not necessarily. Now,
But still, you're still saying that small scale game would be I Go You Go, and it would still
because
you'd
it's
say-
going to be
you'd
a
say
lot
it'd
less.
be
It's going to be a lot less
disruptive.
swingy. It's going to take other mechanics into effect.
See, I find that smaller scale games are more swingy on their own, because when the dice go wrong, it makes a big difference. Like that single die, when you have 40 guys go in and you roll 80 attacks, you're more likely to roll an average than with one guy versus another guy. Like I think about all those monsters or characters who have 2 or 3 awesome attacks.
Yes.
And how often they don't work for you.
Right.
Because no matter how awesome this is, if I have to roll a 3+ and then another 3+, and I only got 3 chances to do it, even the averages tell me that I'm only going to make it once or twice. And then if it swings even slightly below average, all of a sudden I do nothing. Whereas if I throw 40 guys in, and they each just have 1 attack, I'm rolling 40 dice, I can be pretty sure that I'm going to roll way closer to average, just because it's harder when you roll 40 dice to skew.
It's more reliable, right?
It's harder. It's not. It's not more reliable.
Well,
It's
no, it
more
is.
average. It's
Which is more reliable. Okay.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. It's yeah. You can't count on it swinging unless you're like looking for 6s in particular, and
Sure.
that like reduces the spread and everything. But if you're just looking for your normal hits and your normal wounds, when you're rolling 40 dice instead of a small. So at small scale, because playing kill team or playing little skirmish games, those ones tend to swing more. So I think having a double turn mechanic in those ones would actually be even more harmful than in a large scale game.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, if you have your average battle line unit for what's one of my armies, okay, let's say we bring 10 Bestigors and my Beastmen, and I'm that unit charging in to fight. I've done it so many times, I know pretty much what they're going to do.
Right.
Sometimes they roll poor, they still do whatever. Now, there's another character, the Beast Lord's a 5 wound model. He has 6 attacks, the ability to do 3 damage per swing.
Right.
I've had him charge in and do 18 damage. I've had him charge in and do nothing.
Right, it's very swingy.
Exactly.
The single model is swingy, whereas the big unit is
When
more
you
reliable.
exactly, with less reliability, you can other things that impact the like the swinging of the game. I find not to be that big of a deal. To explain a little bit more, I guess, I've had plenty of games where I have been double turned and they still lost.
Right.
But I think
If they didn't have the double turn, it would have been even worse off for them.
correct.
Right.
But in my opinion, we play games, right? We all play games. Sometimes you're going to lose them. Sometimes you lose them bad. As long as you've played your game. Sometimes you don't play your game. So if you could take myself and if you can clone yourself, Matthew, and play against yourself, if I'm going to play against myself cloned, the double turn guy is always going to win 100% of the time.
That's hard to say with certainty.
Well, two
when
people with
you're
equal
given-
skill, equal experience.
But you're playing a dice game.
I accept that, but
And if
I'm
you're
always
playing-
going to win.
And you're assuming that the armies will be identical in balance, which they rarely are. If you clone yourself and play identical armies with symmetrical terrain, then you could actually argue whoever gets to make the choice of who goes first
True.
is actually the one.
Well, sometimes you make your opponent go first. We've all done it, right?
Right.
But what I'm saying is, two people.
Or if there wasn't
so-
a double turn mechanic, the person that could choose to go first would then want to go first, so they could.
Well, it
position
would
themselves better.
would have a leg up, but the other person, knowing he's always going to go second in the battle round, will be able to
Yeah.
adjust for it. But what I'm saying is,
for sure.
two people of equal skill and equal experience, typically their game comes down to the dice, which is it's a good thing.
So I guess there's a couple of points that you've brought up that I'd like to talk about, because not even counterpoints necessarily, but a part of a good discussion. So one of them is this whole, like, in a smaller scale game it wouldn't be as swingy, and talking about that, because there's actually something that makes me think of. The other one is you're talking about balance, and cloning yourself because you're trying to remove all the other variables in the game, right? If you clone yourself, I've just removed skill variable. If we're playing, it's not a bad thing, because you're trying to look at this one part. The hard thing about that, though, is that you're then looking at something in a vacuum, and we know that most rules in a vacuum can break apart. Like, for example, I remember when I first started playing Warhammer 40k, it was I had a Tyranid army, and there was one opponent who had an Orc army, and I remember complaining, saying his Orc boy, the points cost for his Orc boy was the same as the points cost for my Termagant, and it clearly was an imbalance because it was better in every single way. But yet, when we played our games, the games were really fun and very close, and that's when later on I discovered there's a difference between balance in the vacuum and internal balance and external balance. And so, for example, like when you're not just going to have one Termagant fight a single Orc buyer, you're going to have an army, and that Termagant is supported by Synapse creatures, which makes it fearless, and it also, I have access to things in my army that the Orcs don't have access to.
You're 100% right. I agree with you.
So the Orcs need that cheaper Orc boy because, and you can argue that back and forth. And so it's hard to look at a single rule in a vacuum because, and I think this is where Age of Sigmar can be improved. There's a lot of ways that the double turn mechanic actually improves the game because of the large measure of imbalance in the armies. Because
it's always going to be a thing.
There's always going to be a thing.
Yes.
If you somehow think that there is no imbalance in Age of Sigmar and Warhammer 40k, you are in the minority, and you really need to just analyze the statistics of it a little better because it's not actually even that hard to realize it's an imbalance. There's many games where you can just look at 40k in particular. I find it less in Age of Sigmar. In 40k, you can look at the two lists and you can know who's going to win, assuming that players, like one player is not horrible.
It's getting better, but yes, there was a time when
it has gotten much better. It doesn't matter though, because I don't have a problem with that because, well, like I said, we're in a weird situation. I've got a huge collection of models out there. If my opponent comes and I see that he's an opponent of a lesser skill level, or he brings a fun, fluffy list of what I know to be a lower tier, I'm like, sweet, now I can go out there and I can grab my lower tier army that I never get to play because it wouldn't be a fun battle report or a fun game. Now, not everybody has that option. They might only have one army and they have to play against whatever. So the point, coming back to what you're talking about though, is if we look at this mechanic, there are a lot of ways that the double turn mechanic or the random turn, I'm going to call it random turn mechanic because that's more appropriate. The random turn mechanic actually improves the quality of the game. Because a lot of people will complain in 40k that whoever gets to choose who goes first has a huge advantage because in 40k it's more of a shooting game.
Yes.
And because of that, going first, if you have the right shooting army, you can do so much damage to your opponent that it's going to be hard for them to come back from that. It doesn't always happen that way, and thankfully I have a lot of good games of it, and mostly because, like I said, our experience is that people come in more casual, and so they're not building that uber shooty list that can just destroy you first turn, but there are a lot of lists out there that can do that. Or like a really good psychic or whatever. In Age of Sigmar, you tend more towards close combat.
Yes.
That doesn't mean there aren't powerful shooting armies. But ironically, I find because close combat in Age of Sigmar does not follow the tradition of 40k, in 40k, whoever charges goes first, and that is a huge advantage. So if I manage to charge, if I'm playing a Gene Stealer army and 6 units of Gene Stealers charge, you're screwed. Because they're all going to fight. Maybe you'll spend 2 command points and have 1 unit fight back, but you're going to have to drain your command points to be able to have any chance. I'm going to destroy you. If I was using the Age of Sigmar combat rules, I get 6 units of Gene Stealers in, then you're like, okay, I'm still maybe in trouble, but only one of them gets to fight, and then I get to try to kill a few of the Gene Stealers that haven't fought, and then you'll choose a unit, and then I'm going to try to kill some Gene Stealers who haven't fought, and it mitigates that damage. Where the double turn, when somebody gets a double turn, I find is most devastating is not in close combat armies, but in armies that tend more towards shooting or really good magic.
If you're talking about when an army can do more damage, I'll agree to the fact that a shooting army does more damage with a double turn than another army, but I don't. Damage doesn't always win you the game. Sometimes it's just moving. So just because I'm getting double turn doesn't mean I'm going to charge.
Right.
I'm going to position more, get objectives, block you better.
Right.
Double turning is not always about charging you.
No. That's what I'm trying to say. That I think that the armies that really take advantage of double turn are the shooting. No, are for damage is shooting. And those that can reposition themselves really well.
I agree.
Those are the ones that are more powerful with the random turn mechanic. But what I think, and this is coming back to the rule in a vacuum thing, is that it can be part of an arsenal of rules that make Age of Sigmar that much more fun to play. So, like for example, when they came out with endless spells, I thought they were heading towards that.
Yeah.
Where endless spells, basically the mechanic is that you can pay points to bring this really cool spell. Whether it's powerful or not, that was debatable. Actually, not really. Most of them weren't that great. Now they're way cheaper, and there's also like magma invocations and all sorts of stuff. So they are part of the game now. And there's certain ones that are more part of the game. But either way, a lot of the really good damage-dealing ones were predatorial, which meant that you could cast them, but then the following battle round, they're still on the table, and whoever goes second is the one that gets to take control of them and do some damage with it. And so I thought, cool, they're now giving another mechanic to help whoever gets the second turn. Furthermore, when Warhammer 40K came out with their chapter approved, I think it was a 2018 one, and they updated their scenarios, a lot of the scenarios changed from gaining points at the end of your turn to gaining points at the end of the battle round. And when I saw that, I'm like, cool, they're thinking about this. Because the person who goes second does have a disadvantage, so you need to throw them some advantages. So one of them could be that you don't score points to the end of the round. So the person going second has way more advantage there, because they can see what they need to do, and the first player has no control at that point. They've done what they can to mitigate it, and then they sit back and they kind of cross their fingers that the opponent will make mistakes or not roll well enough to take those objectives from them. But in Age of Sigmar, even with the latest General's Handbook 2019, there's only one scenario that truly does that, and that's the relocation orb, where it makes the objective worth 1 point if you go first and 3 points if you go second, which is huge. And so I feel that you're right. In many ways, it swings the game too much and it can ruin the game. But I think that instead of it needing to be taken out, because as soon as you take it out, you're back to the first problem, that then whoever goes first has an advantage.
Well,
that you need to enhance it with making it so going first, even on a double turn, has some serious handicaps.
Okay, I need to address some things. First of all, we were talking about rules in a vacuum. I talk about cloning myself and people of equal skill. So I just want to address that real quick. When I'm talking rules in a vacuum, sure, but I'm saying I'm going to try to outplay myself. I'm going to set something up. I'm going to set up a cool move I'm about to do, and then the other me isn't trying to get around that. So rules in a vacuum,
that doesn't matter
sure.
though, because if you're cloning yourself, then you're basically taking skill out of the equation.
Yeah, it's going to come down to who makes the first mistake. Because no matter how good you are,
you're
mistakes
both,
and dice.
Yeah, you're both. It's going to just be dice now.
Right.
If you clone yourself, you've removed skill from the game.
Okay.
Now it's a dice game. So now we might as well, at that point, play a game where I'm like, okay, let's both roll a die. Whoever rolls higher wins.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So if somebody got off that double turn, that guy won. I will win that game 100%.
No, I mean like just forget everything else. Now it's just you're basically pulling it down.
That's what I kind of feel about. That's what I kind of feel about this.
Right.
So that is kind of my point. And then I want to talk about this. What did you just say? It got me going for a second.
Giving more advantages to the person going second.
Okay, so advantages going first is part of these games. Whether you can even argue whether that even exists. If you're going to plan to go second, but there's no way we're going to play a game where that doesn't exist. It's always been part of the game.
Does that make it a good thing?
No, well, we can't remove that. Somebody has to go first in these games.
Right.
There's very few games on this scale where we play at the exact same time.
Yeah, but you got to mitigate that because people complain about that as a mechanic.
Now,
Like you can have a whole other video discussion of the whole I go, you go mechanic that makes it so good for the player who goes first, and that ruins 40K.
Sure.
And so how would you mitigate, like, why does that have to be mitigated?
Well, for 40K, the scenarios are mitigating. The scenarios are fantastic.
Yes, because they gave the advantage to the second player.
Now, the I go, you go, so sometimes the game will end on turn 2 because of double turn. If I had deployed 5, 6, 8 models, I don't care. We're ready to play again. When you on this scale, when you spend that much time deploying, and then the game, you're wasting all that time on that roll. Now, again, it doesn't happen all the time, and just because you get it doesn't mean you win.
See, that's a tough argument because I find in my experience that doesn't happen very often.
No, but if it does, when it does.
Yes.
When it does, I think that outweighs that damage it does to the player in the game outweighs the boon of sometimes saving somebody.
So you're saying that if you're playing 2 games and one game was saved, we'll say when I get the definition of saved is that it turns a one-sided game into a balanced game, which I find are the most fun games.
Yes.
Where you're playing and you don't know who's going to win until turn 5.
Yes.
And you're just like every last little objective, every last model you kill.
A big comeback because of turn 2. That's a save.
Yes.
I'm sorry, a big comeback because you went 2 turns in a row.
Right.
Like you win this roll off and you're back in the game. You got it. That's so cool.
You know that if you fail that roll off,
game.
you're done.
That's saved. Okay.
So with that definition, you're saying that if we played an equal number of games that were saved, like there's going to be all the games where it didn't make a difference.
Sit forward. You make me look even bigger.
Anyway, so if you're saying let's say that
equal number
of games were saved and the other ones that were ruined from it. You're saying that the emotional toll
Yes.
of the ruined games is
Outbalances.
is not equivalent to the emotional
Yes.
gain of the not ruined games.
Yes.
So here's the problem with that. You're just swapping them. Because over here, if the double turn mechanic hadn't saved the game, then you still have that emotional toll of being like, crap, I just got my...
Yes,
I was
but
just destroyed.
That's part of
because-
gaming. That's always going to happen, no matter what.
But
No matter
isn't that a
there's
problem?
No, well, no, it's obviously not. Or else none of us would be doing this. That will always be part of the game because there's no way to design a game so balanced that never happens.
So then what's the problem with having a mechanic like the random turn mechanic?
Okay, so
where
how's
you're just
this
throwing in
anything-
one extra way to kind of...
Could end it faster because I don't
Not
want
end faster, because it actually also makes them last longer. Because
Sometimes.
we're making the argument right now, which
I'm
might not
talking
even be
about the-
true. So we're making the assumption, because we have no way to prove or disprove this,
Yep.
that it's going to save as many games as it ruins.
Yep.
So that equals out the number of times it'll be frustrating to the number of times that it would have been frustrating if it hadn't existed.
Because
so
I've
wouldn't
played-
the emotional toll be the same?
I know many others have played many games where I myself didn't actually play or my opponent didn't actually play.
Because of the double turn?
Because of double turn.
Have you ever played a game without the double turn where you didn't actually play?
Um,
Because I have.
I have played one in 40K where my opponent didn't play, but it was ridiculous. It does happen, but not nearly as often as AOS. No, here's the point I can make. Here's the final point I can make, and I think if you can, this is hard to get around of. Are there people out there who won't play AOS because of double turn?
Yeah.
Many.
Wow.
Are there people? Oh no, there is.
But they may. The
But no,
question
there-
is the question. That's a hard question because you can survey and be like, would you play if they got rid of the double turn?
Your
They
gut,
say
you immediately
yes.
said yes.
And then if you remove that double turn, a lot of those people still wouldn't because they'd find some other reason, whether it's money or time or
just
something else they don't
just
like about
that
it.
mechanic had made them walk away. I know plenty who won't.
That's a hard
No,
argument
I'm
to
going
make, because
anecdotal here.
You can't
but
prove that.
your gut immediately went yes because you know there are many people out there who aren't playing this game because of the mechanic.
But that's still a hard thing to prove because
Sure.
if I made this one change to the game, would you start playing? And
You do that with every game.
that's
But
a hard thing to sell. Like it's hard to say to me like if you'd made that one change.
Well, if it was so hard to sell, then why are we making this video? It's obviously controversial.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So I think you have to give me this. There are plenty of people out there who won't play AOS. I'm not saying millions. I don't think there's millions of players. But I'm not saying they're like there are plenty out there who aren't playing because of that mechanic. How many are out there playing because of that mechanic?
I don't know.
There's probably somebody. There probably is. I doubt that many.
That's a good question. So once again in the comments, throw your voice into that argument. Are you one of those players? Honestly, really evaluate it. Don't just knee-jerk this and say to yourself, is the double turn mechanic the one and only thing standing in my way of playing Age of Sigmar? And would I actually invest in it if they only got rid of that? They don't change their models, they don't change any other rules, they don't change the setting lore, they don't bring back fantasy, they just remove the random turn mechanic. Would that then make you want to play? I'd love to hear that.
Also, there's another way to ask the question as well. And please be honest, because I know we're going to get some, you said knee-jerk reactions.
There's always people.
If you play AOS right now and you love it, and they pulled that rule out, would you stop playing?
That's actually a good point too, because even if it's a negative response to people who like it, if it doesn't stop them from playing the game, but then there's a bunch of people who would start playing it, then that's a net gain.
Do you not think there's going to be it would be a net gain or a net positive for the community?
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No, I think that it's a good part of the game if they tightened it up. I think that it mitigates because every game that has an I go, you go has a problem. And they try to fix that problem. I remember when I played War Machine, their way of trying to fix it was that whoever went first had to deploy 3 inches further back. And in War Machine, which was a huge positioning game, that was a big deal. Yeah. And I remember it started off as only 2 inches back, and then I remember when it switched to 3 inches, because even 2 inches wasn't enough to mitigate it. So they're like, no, you got to start 3 inches back. And I remember that actually giving me a lot of like, do I deploy 10 inches first? Do I deploy 10 inches forward? Or do I deploy 7 inches forward? There's also ways to mitigate it by having one person choose where they get to deploy, and the other person getting to choose who then goes first. There's also things like whoever deploys first has to go first. Deploys first.
Chooses in this game. But
No, I'm saying the opposite. If you get to choose to go first, or you choose who deploys first, because there's a disadvantage to deploying first.
Yeah.
In this game, you go back and forth, and whoever actually manages to finish first actually then also gets to choose first.
Yeah.
So Yeah, sorry. Whoever deploys first goes first. So that actually works. So sorry.
Whoever deploys first goes first. 40K
Right.
deploys first goes first, other than
Yeah,
series.
so there are ways to mitigate it back and forth, making sure your table's not asymmetrical with their terrain. That's one thing I learned from Infinity.
True, but
Because then all of a sudden,
sometimes
there's a lot of other decisions in the game rather than who goes first that are very important. And so being able to have more control over that, giving that advantage to whoever's not going first, can make a big difference. Like being able to choose where you deploy, maybe having more control over where the objectives go. Things like that. Like I don't know if you need to be able to deploy a little further forward. That's not a horrible idea, but it's not necessary in Age of Sigmar because the movement speeds are a lot different than War Machine. So there's a lot of other things to consider. But I think, honestly, if all they did was make endless spells way more viable, which is a whole other discussion video,
yeah,
and make it so that you're seeing them more commonly on the table. And I mean
the predatory ones.
I mean predatorial
Yes,
ones.
yeah.
Because I know lots of people like the walls and the
There's plenty of the shackles, the gears, plenty of good ones out
yes,
there.
and the invocations that nobody gets to take control of, and the Corn ones that are not endless spells that you can't take control of.
Those are good.
Those are really good.
Those are very good.
But they have to find a way to make them better. I have a few suggestions for that really quickly. They don't take up a spell slot when you cast them.
Agreed.
Also making them not cost any points, but making them
Agreed.
cost, like when you choose a spell, you could choose an endless spell. But anyway, that's another discussion. So making those more viable so that whoever goes second is more likely to have some advantage there. But a big part would just be changing the scenarios. If all they did for me, because right now, if you were to ask me, Matthew,
That's
you have
interesting.
complete control.
Yes.
You can't change anything except if they have the random turn mechanic. I would lean towards getting rid of it, but not heavily. I'd be more like reluctant. I'm like, okay, if you don't give me control over anything, okay, yeah, we'll remove it. But I'd rather have control to make these other changes because I think then that it becomes a really fun and cool part of the game. Every turn, you do this roll off, and it's like, I gotta choose.
See, I'm with you
Do
there.
I go right now
I
and
agree.
beat the crap out of him? Or do I go second and have a chance to grab all those points?
I agree. And my point is, and I think you understand this too, Mr. Reiterate, in its current state, the way the rules are right now, I don't like that mechanic.
So here's your choice then. Would you rather get rid of the random turn mechanic or add in other aspects of the game, whether it be things like I talked about for the scenarios and the spells, or even other things that give advantage to who's going second? Which one of those would you choose? And it's a hard one or the other. If you choose random turn, you can't change anything else, and nothing else will change.
I got my answer on that.
Yes.
I think I would keep it if you added other things that impact. There was a downside. Other things. I think the potential is there.
Right.
The potential of cool and fun is there.
And see,
in its current state, I do not like it.
And I think that the players that really do like it already feel that cool.
Do
they
they?
already enjoy that aspect.
There are people out there who like it.
Yeah.
I
would say
there are
there's
people out there who
more.
like it.
I'm guessing there's more Age of Sigmar players, current players, who like it than don't. Otherwise, like you said, they probably wouldn't play the game. But that's a hard thing. All I know is that Age of Sigmar sells way better than Warhammer Fantasy ever did, so they're doing something right.
Whoa! The market's also a lot bigger than it ever was. Let's all respect Warhammer Fantasy. All of this exists because of it.
Warhammer Fantasy is awesome.
Age of Sigmar, Warhammer 40K, all exists because of Warhammer Fantasy.
Yes.
We will respect it. Carry on, sir.
I respect Warhammer Fantasy. I'm
More.
just saying
Respect
that
it more.
that Age of Sigmar is selling way better than it did. Not like 30 years ago. I'm talking about what it was doing.
But like
Their numbers
like
are
the
there.
market's
It
different.
It
like
doesn't
the
matter.
prices are
They
different.
made
like,
the changes. They made the changes.
Adjusted for inflation, I don't know if that's true.
Doesn't matter. It does. They have public numbers. You can see them.
I don't know if
All right,
it's
you can't deny that. Whether you
can't-
like the game better or not, that's selling
You
better
can't
than
prove
10.
me anything with numbers.
Yeah, right. 5 is greater than 1.
Prove it.
Actually, prove it.
Where's your advocates?
It's like, how do you know we're not in this?
Why not one? How do you know that one's not greater than the other 5?
How do you know you're not in the Matrix and that's all just made up?
Could be.
Numbers are just a made up thing by the Matrix.
Could be.
Anyways, but putting that aside, that's interesting that in the end that you would say that because I think that the players currently that enjoy it, including myself, enjoy the tension, and as much as I hate it, sometimes I hate it. When we're about to roll, I'm like, I hate this roll, but I love it because it creates such emotion. And that emotional impact is what we play these games for. We don't play it to play a clone of ourselves. And if we want a perfectly strategic game, you play chess. That's what you do. And even that one is imbalanced towards the white player because they get to go first, and that means it was like they win 53% of the time or something. I can't remember in like a high level.
I agree. Sometimes it saves a game.
Right, but it
Sometimes
doesn't
it
matter.
does.
It doesn't matter if it saves the game. It's that emotional tension that is created because
Sometimes
of
it does.
Just like the random turn mechanic for 40K, you get to turn 5 and you're like, crap, I'm going to lose unless I get another turn. And it comes down to a 3+ roll.
But I've already played 5 turns.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
No, I'm not arguing that it has the same impact.
Okay.
I'm trying to say that there's so many games that I've played, not every game, where it comes down to a single die roll.
I like those games.
Oh, I love it.
When you've played for a couple hours back and forth, and it's like, oh, if you roll a 4, like that's awesome.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so I find that the random turn mechanic brings that in every single turn. And I think that's what people enjoy about it. I also think that it doesn't ruin the game as often as you think it does. It might, obviously I can't argue for your games,
right?
Because you feel that it does. But I think that just like when somebody thinks they roll poorly, I love it when people say that, by the way.
Everybody does.
I have a bad dice roll.
I'm like,
that is impossible, man.
Everybody there come in here and said they're a bad dice roll.
I'm like, and then it becomes that thing where they roll, and if they rolled poorly, they confirm it, right? It's that, what is it, confirmation bias?
Yep.
Where they're like, yep, see, I rolled poorly. And whenever they roll well, that doesn't like.
Not me. I don't even have to try to roll dice.
Yeah, well, it does.
Nothing but
Right,
5.
exactly. You think you're a good roller, but it's impossible. Like there's all this. There's a lot of bias involved in all these, and in the end, like we said at the very beginning, we are arguing
About a game. It's true.
that you do not have to play, nor spend your money on, nor even watch this video about, and yet here we are, because we love it.
That's true.
It is dear to our heart, and I think that's why it gets so emotional.
It is.
Because
100%.
we want somebody else has control over something that
Yes.
we love so much,
Yes.
and we want them to treat it the best.
Yeah.
And the problem is, with 1 million people playing it, and it's more than 1 million people playing it, that you're never going to be able to satisfy everybody, which is why you've got to create a variety.
I'm okay with that. That's why there's always gonna be things in the game that that's part of gaming. It's part of gaming.
Okay, I think I've made every point I want to make.
I've made my point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think? What do you think? What should happen? What is the best possible outcome for Games Workshop when it comes to the random turn mechanic? I'd love to hear your ideas in the comments below. So make sure you have nice discussions with each other. No name calling. I'm looking at you. And John, just leave a nice comment. You too, Mike. Okay? Just figure it out. Anyways, that's it for now. I hope that you enjoyed this. Make sure you check out our Age of Sigmar battle reports. If I remember, I'll put some links in the description below. But really, just go to our channel. You'll find all sorts of Age of Sigmar battle reports, especially the coverage in the General's Handbook 2019, which I love, which is great. It's such a good game. Thanks for watching. Happy wargaming.